These kinds of questions seem like friendly small talk to you, but they're actually probing questions. They've been trained to do this. The officer is gathering any information they can to build a case against you. In honor of the 4th of July 2023, I've got a really good video for you. It does discuss some of the Constitution, and I'm going to talk about the rights that you have when you're pulled over in a traffic stop. I talked about this in my last video, and I mentioned on the most important lessons I've learned in the past 6 years as a nomad. And I think it was number 3 or 4, I mentioned that the important lesson I learned is to know your rights in a traffic stop when you're pulled over. And I don't know very many people that have never been ever pulled over. So this is important for living in a house, also especially for nomads, because we're on the road more. Well, I wanted to give you a brief intro from me because I got some blowback from just briefly talking about that, because I had a list of a whole bunch of other things. Well, this video is dedicated to what to do if you're pulled over, what you can do and what you don't have to do. Now, I did get some comments. Some of you really chimed in, not a lot, but a few. One of you chimed in and said, oh my gosh, yes, you've got to know your rights. You can really be abused out there when you're pulled over. And they can really bully you because they're authority figures. Well, I did get also blowback from a couple of retired police officers. And it wasn't good. I wasn't shocked. I guess it just confirmed why I need to present this information to you. I'm going to guess that a lot of you already know this. And if you don't, you should. I mean, this is the 4th of July. These are our freedoms. These are freedoms from our Constitution in the United States. But one retired cop, he kind of blowed back, and he was name-calling this other person who said, oh, this is what happened to me. As she cited, back the blue until it happens to you. She said that a few times. Well, the information that he gave was a little surprising. I shouldn't be, but it was, that he said, you have to answer questions. If a cop asks you a question, you must answer. Not true. Not true. And that you must, if the only reason you would even say, I want to talk to my attorney, is if you were guilty. I think we already know that. Don't you think? I mean, here's the biggest case that I can remember. Remember Jean Bonnet, that little girl who was, she was in the pageants, and she was, most of you young might not remember, but the Bonnet family. And she was murdered. They found her dead in the home. Well, the Bonnets got an attorney right away. And everybody said, oh, guilty. They're probably guilty. That's why they got an attorney. I think we've all learned that's probably the most stark case I can remember where people were really saying, oh, they're guilty. That wasn't true. They were never charged. They were not guilty. There's a lot of things that they're still discovering things on that case. But I digress on that. That was, to me, when I thought about that event came to my mind. No, you need to contact your attorney. If things are going down, you must talk to your attorney. You need to zip it. And it doesn't prove your guilt. So these are things, this is why I want to talk about this, because there are cops out there that they don't know the law. They're trying to enforce the law, but they don't know the law. They're ignorant of what the law really says and what the Constitution says. So let's get started with this. And I'm going to ask you, please do not name call. I'll let comments go on this, but I really am going to be very vigilant on this. There'll be no name calling. This is not a right and left. This is not a conservative, a liberal issue. I mean, this poor gal was called a leftist loony. I was called names too because I was saying, hey, this is what the law states. And Paul and I, what we did was we gathered information from attorneys on YouTube, what they're saying, and on the web, on what they recommend. And they're all very in agreement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from step 1 to step A to Z, which I say quite a bit, from A to Z, what to do during a traffic stop, what your rights are. Okay, so let's get started with this. No name calling. This is not a right or left issue. This is an American issue, and with our rights and the 4th of July. I also want to mention that I didn't in my video. You must film the incident. If you're getting pulled over, film it. Even if you put your phone on the holder and you turn on the video so you can hear what's going on, you get the audio. You have every right to film the police. You have every right to do that. And the Supreme Court just ruled not that long ago that we have the right to film police officers or things that are going on, their behavior. Even if you're not involved in the incident, you have the right, as long as you're not too close to impede their investigation. But a lot of officers are coming. I'm seeing them in the shorts and in videos that even if you're standing back, they come up and they want to grab your phone from you. That's against the law. So I'm not, and let me say, I'm not against the blue. I am not. I have a really good friend, from Tucson. He's my age. He's retired now, but we still talk. He is a police officer. No, I don't hate police officers, but there are a lot of police officers out there not following the law and on power trips. And I don't think anybody can deny that. So let's get started. Uh-oh, you've been pulled over. Now here's the right way to handle a traffic stop. So the gist of this whole video is when you're pulled over, please follow these steps to keep yourself safe and avoid trouble with the police. I don't know a single person that's never been pulled over by the police. Most of the time the infraction is minor, speeding or a broken tail light or something similar. And the consequences are no more than a warning and a little inconvenience. But that's not how it goes every time. You see, a routine traffic stop is really nothing more than an opportunity for the police to search and find other reasons to cite and even arrest you. It's true. Even the police have admitted this. A simple traffic stop that turns into more could ruin your life, even if you didn't do anything wrong. Sounds unlikely? But it's more common than you might think. While violent crime in the U.S. continues to drop every year, and has for over a decade, arrests and incarcerations continue to climb. In 2011, 1 in 25 Americans were arrested, and 1 in 33 were arrested for crimes that did not involve violent theft or property damage. This number is astounding, seriously, and in my opinion, should frighten any smart person in the United States who believes in liberty and freedom. I'm afraid to report to you who are watching this that we may now be living in a police state. What do you think? I mean, if 1 in 25, and if you think this doesn't concern you because you don't live in the U.S., it certainly does if you ever plan to visit. The U.S. treats foreigners even worse. Since being stopped by the police while driving is very normal, you should know the right way to handle it when it happens to you. So let's get into this. I'm sorry to say this is controversial, but the police are not your friends. I'm afraid to say that, and it's sad to say that. These days, unless you've called and asked for help, the police are likely not your friends, and they are not there to help you. They are there to decide if you've done something wrong and whether they can arrest you to maintain order. I know. So, but in some regard, that's correct. To have a successful, low-risk interaction with the police, you do have to be a bit of a pain in the butt. But I reject that view. Luckily here in the U.S., we do still have a constitution and laws that very specifically spell out how the police are allowed to treat you and what rights you have while being stopped by them. Exercising your rights, in my view, is not being a pain in the butt. It's being patriotic. Even more, it's being a smart person, a smart citizen, and not exposing yourself to unnecessary risk. I was through it. I've been through it. This is especially important for the risk takers among us who live by a moral or ethical code that does not always match up with existing laws. Here's the right way to deal with the police during a traffic stop. To have a successful low-risk interaction with the police when you're pulled over, you really only need to remember 3 rules. Number 1, always be courteous and polite. A bit of class and respect will take you far in life, and it will make the next steps easier for you. Number 2, resist every request of the police until you're forced to oblige. Never resist physically, but do resist verbally and respectfully until it becomes clear you'll be arrested if you don't comply. Don't worry, you don't get in trouble for being arrested. You only get in trouble for being convicted of the crime you're being arrested for. Sounds scary, huh? This is explained in more detail further on. And number 3, do not answer questions. No matter what an officer tells you, you are never compelled to speak to the police or answer their questions without a lawyer present. You may think that being helpful and answering questions, even friendly ones, can help your cause. You're wrong. And I'm going to give some examples. Learning these rules is simple. There's not much to remember, but actually, practicing them can prove incredibly difficult. I mean, let's face it, being stopped by the police is stressful. And it can feel scary to stand up to an authority figure. Lots of studies on that. In fact, many times an officer will tell you that you have to do something when actually you do not. And this is hard to believe, but it's perfectly legal for the police to lie to you. They're trained to do that. That's why it's so important for your safety and well-being that you know what your rights are and exercise these 3 rules. Now let's go over how to respond to difficult situations during a traffic stop in ways that will keep your rights protected and lower your risk of getting in trouble for something you weren't stopped for in the first place. Here we go. When you see lights behind you, a traffic stop almost always begins with a police car flashing its lights at you and perhaps giving you a short siren blast. Even if you've never been pulled over before, you should know how to respond to this. Pull over to the curb and stop immediately. Even if you're not being pulled over, you should always do this so that the officer can easily go around you and get to where they actually need to be. If you are being pulled over, stay there even if it seems unsafe to park. If the officer doesn't like where you're parked, he'll instruct you where to move. A lot of people have learned this the hard way, where they tried to find a place and the officer was so angry by the time you actually did stop. Yeah. And so they could cite you for trying to evade the police. Yeah. Once it's obvious that you're the one being pulled over, here's what to do. Turn off the car and put on the emergency brake. This shows the officer that you understand what's going on and that you're not planning to run away. If you're very nervous, most likely. It also keeps you from accidentally doing something stupid, like bumping your shifter into drive as you reach for papers in your glove compartment. Turn on the dome light. If it's dark out, turn on your overhead lamp so the officer can see a bit into your car. This is for your own safety because it puts the officer at ease knowing that he can see what you're doing. Now here's where the controversy can get kind of sticky. Some of you said you got to roll your window down all the way. No. Roll your window down 1/4 of the way. Roll it down just far enough to pass documents and communicate clearly with the officer. Do not roll your window down all the way. This is very important, and here's why. A very common way for the police to escalate a traffic stop is to place their head into an open window and claim that they smell marijuana or alcohol or something else illegal, even if they didn't. This gives them the reasoning they need to invade more of your personal space. If you don't roll down your window very far down, it will be hard for the officer's "I smelled marijuana" argument to hold up in court. Place your hands on the wheel. This is another tactic that will put the officer at ease. He should always be able to see where your hands are at any given moment, so keep them on your steering wheel. Once the officer has approached your car, this is where even the best laid plans start to fall apart. Why? Because this is where the questioning starts. Your heart starts to race a bit. You're getting nervous and a bit sweaty. You want to do anything you can just to make the whole interaction end as soon as possible. And that's when the officer asks with a smile on his face, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Stop. It's a trap. Maybe you know, maybe you don't, but you have a suspicion that you were speeding or you accidentally swerved a little way back there. Yeah, the average person would answer, but not a smart person. Do not answer. Instead, answer honestly, "No, sir or ma'am, I don't." If you answer this question, it's already game over. You've admitted your guilt. At the very least, you're getting a ticket. Most likely, you invite another line of questioning that you now feel obligated to answer because you already admitted you were doing something wrong. So your best line of defense is say, "No. No, I don't, sir or ma'am." Remember the 3 rules. When an officer asks you if you know why they pulled you over, respectfully decline to answer. A simple no will suffice. If at any time during your stop you feel pressured to answer a question, don't. You are protected by the Constitution's 5th Amendment, the right to remain silent. You have the right to not testify against or incriminate yourself. You cannot get in trouble for refusing to answer a question. You have to remember that, people. It's going to be nerve-wracking, but you got to go over this, even if you have to watch this video a couple times. Early in your interaction would be a good time to tell the officer you respectfully choose not to answer questions today. He'll probably be annoyed, but that's life, right? After the first few moments with you at the car, this is also a common time for the officer to start asking other friendly or seemingly harmless questions. Like, where are you coming from? Where are you headed? What are you up to tonight? These kinds of questions seem like friendly small talk to you, but they're actually probing questions. They've been trained to do this. The officer is gathering any information they can to build a case against you. It's very important that you do not ever lie to a police officer. So the best option is to always politely decline to answer. I cannot stress enough how awkward this will feel for you. I failed the test the first time when I was in El Paso. I failed horribly. You may be made to think that you're digging yourself into a lot of trouble, but you aren't. Not answering is the safest and smartest way for you to handle questions from the police, even if you have nothing to hide. Think about the case that could be built against you by making just two simple mistakes. Rolling your window down all the way and answering a question you shouldn't have. The police report might read something like this. For example, I found this on the internet. The report says, I pulled the suspect over because her driver's side taillight was out. When I approached the car, the window was rolled down and I smelled alcohol. The suspect admitted she'd been drinking and had just one beer about 3 hours ago. I asked her out of the car and performed a field sobriety test. I also performed an inspection of the vehicle interior for open containers and asked if she had anything illegal in the car. The suspect lied when she said she did not. No alcohol was present, but hidden under the seat was a bottle of illegal prescription painkillers belonging to an unrelated person. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yes. And in the beginning, all you were guilty of was not realizing your taillight was out. But since your window was rolled down, the officer had an open invitation to smell something. Anything. Which allowed him to further his interrogation. That's all he's got to say is, I smell something. Yeah, that gives him an open invitation. Pretty soon, you're outside the car, he's inside, and he just found a bottle of pills your friend dropped between the seat while giving her a ride home from the hospital. This is just a case scenario, but this is how it can escalate. You're now a drug offender. Enjoy your incarceration and your rehabilitation. All of this could have been avoided by following the 3 cardinal rules. Let's go over them again. Be polite and respectful. Resist requests until forced to oblige, and never answer questions. At the beginning of the traffic stop, it's also common for the officer to ask you to roll your window down further. Respectfully, don't do it. If your officer is in a good mood or recognizes that you know your rights, this will likely be the end of your interaction. The officer will return to their cruiser and either write you a ticket for your original infraction or send you on your way. Hooray! You just survived your encounter. Back to business as usual. But sometimes it goes further. Hang on, let's go further. If you're asked to step out of your car, you're being asked to step out of your car, now what? If you've been following the 3 cardinal rules and your officer is on a bit of a power trip, not unusual, and really has it in for you, he may ask you to step out of your car. Well, here's what you do. Do not comply on the first request. Instead, politely ask why he wants you to get out. He will likely continue to insist. At this point, there is little chance you're going to get to stay in your car. But by continuing to respectfully decline his request, you'll show him that you're not going to do every single thing he asks without questions. Again, we're lucky that we also have the 4th Amendment on our side, the right to freedom from unnecessary search and seizure, the 4th Amendment. But it can only protect you if you exercise it. If we don't know it and we don't exercise it, what good is it? We say, we have a Constitution. Well, know it and use it. Once you leave your car, there are a few very important steps to take to protect and clearly communicate your rights. So here's what you do. First, don't get out of the car. First, roll your window all the way up. Lock all the doors. As you exit, say very clearly to the officer, I do not consent to any searches of me or my property. These 3 steps are the way that you can effectively tell the officer that he's not allowed to touch you or your stuff. Now, seriously, that doesn't mean he isn't going to do it anyway, but it's important to clearly set your expectation so that it cannot be said in court that you were okay with what was happening. Now, why is this important? Well, unfortunately, because many times an officer will know that they don't have the legal authority to search your car without your permission or your warrant or a warrant. For common traffic stops, a judge would not issue a warrant, so the officer knows they must instead get your permission to search your car. They may say things like, I'm going to take a look in your car, okay? Or is it all right if I check around inside your vehicle? In the moment, these might sound like commands, but they aren't. They're actually requests. It's important that you don't grant them. Stating ahead of time that you do not consent to any searches makes that clear. Hopefully, if you stay calm and polite, the officer will, after a little pat down and more questioning that goes nowhere, realize he's reached the end of his investigative rope and send you on your way. If your traffic stop reaches this point, there's about a 0% chance you're leaving without a ticket. But as long as you behave properly, you'll leave without a much more severe ticket or a criminal record. Now here is the big question. Am I being detained or am I free to go? This phrase is the most important one that you will need to remember anytime you're being stopped by the officer. So you say, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Hopefully, any traffic stop you're involved in will not require it. But this simple question can make everything a lot more clear for you and will force the officer to get to the point rather than continue to ask probing and escalating questions. Why does this work? Because for an officer to legally detain you, he must have probable cause that you have committed or are about to commit a crime. Granted, probable cause is a pretty vague requirement and easy for a determined cop to get around. But asking the question, am I being detained, can save you time and trouble. In any interaction with the police, you are either in one state or the other, being detained or free to go. There is no in between on that. The reason asking this is important is because the officer will avoid addressing whether you're detained or free to go until as late as possible. I went through that, hoping that he can keep you talking longer, enough to build probable cause for detention, knowing that you were free to go all along and never had to say anything. Ask this question regularly in a respectful way to prevent unnecessary questioning. If at any time the officer responds no, and that you're not detained, it means just that. You're free to go on your way. Ask, am I free to go? Add that in too. You wouldn't want to drive off only to find 20 cops chasing you down because you took off after the officer said you weren't being detained. Yeah, because he may have said, no, you're not free to go. Well, they could say you're fleeing. So scared to use these tactics? You're not alone. We all get scared using these. But these, if we all start doing it, maybe we would all be a little bit safer if we all did. Most people fear authority. They prefer to do anything asked of them to avoid any kind of punishment. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. Instead, authority is supposed to fear you. They should know that any power they have comes from you agreeing to give it to them. And if they want to keep it, They have to follow the rules and treat you with dignity and respect. Most of the time, that's how it goes. But when it doesn't, don't be afraid to assert your rights. For best results, you should always follow the 3 cardinal rules. Let's go over them again. 1, be polite and respectful. Number 2, verbally resist demands. Number 3, do not answer questions. But it's up to you to decide to what degree you employ the rules. These are decisions you'll need to make as you go based on the interaction you're having. You don't want to take a friendly officer who's about to let you go after 5 minutes and turn him into your worst enemy, who puts you in a holding cell for 48 hours while he decides whether to charge you with something, right? Use your emotional intelligence and be courteous. But also never forget, it's not against the law for the police to lie to you. So just because they're being a little friendly, and I'll describe what happened to me in a minute. The U.S. sends a lot of people to jail who never expect to end up there. Truth. I wanted to get this out because it was obvious that there's a lot of misinformation out there about how to handle a traffic stop. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your comments as long as they're respectful, but don't berate me for what I'm giving you, because this is from these are from attorneys, these are from lawyers that list this. And I will tell you, there's one video, I couldn't find it, where it's from a lawyer, and he talks about this, and then at the end of the video there's a cop that comes up, a police officer, and he says everything he said is true. Our main goal is to increase a case against you. We're collecting information. We're acting nice, but we're not. We're collecting information to make an arrest. If there is an arrest, I just looked this up. If there is an arrest, what you say is, I want to talk to my lawyer, and I am claiming the 5th Amendment. That's all you need to say. I want to contact my lawyer. Now, if you are contacting your lawyer, they don't have to listen to they can't listen in, because that's private. But if you're calling a friend to call a lawyer for you, well, they can listen in on that. So be very careful what you say. Okay, so be safe out there. So have safe travels, everybody. This is a nomad issue. We're on the road a lot more than people who are bricks and sticks. So this is, I'm imploring you for safe travels and follow these rules, especially those 3 cardinal rules. Please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. Go to minivanlee.com for neck gaiters and all kinds of things. And I got the book, How to Live in a Minivan, the Minivan Lee Way, on Amazon. I love you. Mwah. Till tomorrow. Bye.